Happy Poetry Month, everybody. You're listening to A Little Too Quiet, the Ferndale Library podcast. It's brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. My name is Jeff. I am your host. I'm here every week. And I'm going to be joined in a little bit here by Jacqueline Suskin, who is a local poet and educator who's been teaching workshops, writing books, hosting retreats, and creating spontaneous poetry around the world since 2009 with her mobile poem store and her manual typewriter. Now, that was a bit of a past life. Jacqueline's been here in town working on new poetry collections and a lot of other workshops and a lot of other cool things. And she has a new book out called The Verse for Now. When I say out, actually, it's coming out a week from the day that you're hearing this. It's actually coming out on Earth Day. It's going to be at the, there's going to be an event at the 27th Letter Press. We're going to be talking about that. Jacqueline Suskin has been on the podcast before. We'll link to that previous episode in the show notes. You can find out more at jacquelinesuskin.com. And we're going to be talking about Poetry Month, what poetry means. We're going to be talking about the verse for now and connecting to nature and so much more. So here's our interview with Jacqueline Suskin.
Yeah, this Poetry Month stormy mug. Oh my gosh, the weather is making me feel, I'm like, how am I going to do anything today? I'm glad we have this. I don't have to, I can just be in my little cozy space and talk to you. It's nice.
It feels right. I mean, I haven't done the reading on this. I'm sure there's maybe some history or some meaning behind it, but it feels right that April would be Poetry Month, maybe a little bit, because it is,
yes.
It feels, at least up here in Michigan, it feels very transitional. You feel all the feelings. You go on a spectrum of cold to warm. It's a lot of
poets are obsessed with writing about spring too. I mean, obsessed. There are so many poems about spring. It's wild.
Oh, yes, indeed. How are you, by the way, in general? Congrats on the...
I'm okay. I'm
Great.
Good. I feel like it's a frantic time of year, and that's just the vibe. And so I've been kind of letting that just be the case and knowing that soon enough we will completely thaw out and everything will be in bloom and I'll be fine.
Yes, indeed. We Michiganders, it feels like the new year really is like March, and then we start getting really energized. It maybe especially helps if you have a book coming out on Earth Day. Oh my gosh, congrats.
I know, I'm excited. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
The verse for now.
Yes, The Verse for Now. That's what it's called.
And so these are going to be a meditative collection of poetry exploring interior and planetary upheaval, which we feel that through verses on interconnection, grief, and the transformative power of deep listening to the earth. And I definitely want to talk about, well, really all of those, but maybe we could start with deep listening to the earth. This is following up December 2023 when you had a book out called A Year in Practice, which was all about the seasons, but also geared toward inspiration and giving people prompts, really. So maybe start there. Talk about the distinguishing features between the newest book and that book. Is this book more interior from you? How would you describe this book, The Verse for Now?
Well, following A Year in Practice, I have these two books that are kind of these creative guidance books, A Year in Practice and Every Day is a Poem.
Right.
And those books are full of poems. They're, there's poetry in every section, and poetry is definitely like the heart of each one of those books. But The Verse for Now is just pure poetry, and it's definitely a personal narrative. It's less about me instructing the reader, even though I do think that poetry typically that I love is usually something of a reflection, and that I feel, a connection there. I feel like a resounding link, like this person who is writing this is writing about their own experience. But if they're doing a really great job, then I'm usually invited into that, and I can kind of see myself in it and relate to it. So I think this book has both a very strong personal narrative, which really is just the exploration of me and my decision to leave California and move back to Michigan, my birthplace, and all of the cosmic searching that went into that process of making those decisions. And but then it also kind of has woven into that this exploration of what it is to be an earth worshiper or just a human being on planet Earth in this time of ecological ruin and climate collapse, and what we're seeing reverberate through all of us, these fears, these concerns, this grief, this mourning that's already happening, and then also hope and visions for, possible changes and outcomes that might be a little bit better than a dark horizon of nothingness. So the book kind of leans into all of that.
I'm admittedly just still going through my morning coffee, but I had two disparate thoughts as I was getting ready for this interview, and I was thinking that here we are, it's Poetry Month. Here we are, given all the table setting you literally just did as far as what the stakes are. But a couple of things happened since we last spoke. And one of them was about 6 months ago. I don't know if you saw this, or, here I am. I'm in the library, so I'm obviously, as a marketer, I'm on their social media accounts a lot. So I'm inadvertently exposed to things that go viral on TikTok. Ethan Hawke briefly went viral on TikTok talking about poetry.
Talking about poetry. I did see, yes.
And he was like, well, people really don't think about poetry until they actually need something, particularly when they are feeling a bit of unmoored feelings about like, hey, I'm feeling really edgy right now. It could be about relationship, could be about grief, could be about anything. And poetry is kind of grounding them almost in a way, or at least calms them. Maybe what's your interpretation? Give me your Ethan Hawke moment. What does poetry do because you did some great table setting there for what we could be feeling about the world right now. What can a poem do right now? Or even what does it do for you to start?
I think when a poem really works for me, what it's probably doing most is giving me some sense of affirmation. Like if I can see myself or some very deep, expansive feeling that I've been carrying around reflected back to me on the page, then first of all, I have kind of an added sense of clarity around it. I can see it in a new way, maybe, or even just feel that familiarity. And I think that connects me to the person who wrote it. But then also that just sort of connects me to what it is to be human, because whoever wrote it is a human. And, if they're having that feeling and I'm having that feeling, then there's a great chance that most folks are having those feelings. And to have it put into words it does kind of soothe me, but also it could be inspiring, and it could let me feel like maybe there's more to say on that subject, or I'm not the only one exploring the depths here. And I do think that sense of connection is probably what I love most about it. And I think connecting in that space of depth and true vulnerability and expression is something that we don't really just get in our everyday lives necessarily. So I do think that poetry is always the place I turn to when I'm like, I have a big feeling, or I need to feel something deeply after a day of, running around in the world and feeling like maybe not a single person was vulnerable with me, or I wasn't able to, hold space or be that way with someone else. Then I can turn to the book that someone wrote, and it's sitting there for me, ready to invite me into that. And I love that. I feel like I return to books over and over and over again just to kind of reaffirm that feeling in myself.
Ease anxieties. I feel I would like to go on a tangent here, and maybe you could, if you feel like it, speak on a specific poem, because the title of it is very, very evocative, even provocative. Lift up the infinite unrolling blankness. Whoa. Whoa, in the verse for now from you. But talk about, like, I don't know, there's a lot of energy behind that title alone.
Yeah. Well, this book really does explore a lot of what I have personally uncovered in the realm of meditation. And I think that as a practice for myself, but also kind of following the lineage of, really studying Zen meditation and giving myself a lot of space to, what I like to say, sit in the void I think there's a lot of exploration of that in the book. And that poem that you're referencing, lifting up this kind of feeling that everything is actually blank and open and void, and we are just this swirling chaos within all of that, and there is a freedom in that. And the heart of that poem kind of asks this question that's like, why would we do anything at all if this is just this chaotic swirl of nothingness? And I think the answer kind of comes out in different ways throughout the book, and one of them is just like it's like the antithesis of that is just, well, why not? If we're here, we might as well do something. We might as well lift. We might as well try. We might as well keep building and keep experimenting and keep the lessons going. And I think I think one of the things here actually kind of makes me want to read a poem from the book that is really about the mind.
Sure.
I don't have that. The idea of, getting into this meditative state and questioning, like, what is the mind in all of this?
Right.
We're an assortment of atoms that have come together in these rare forms. We're making this story continue on planet Earth. And as I looked deeply into all of this and really let myself have time with it, I came to this question where I was like, well, what is the mind? Like, why does the mind exist? And I kind of like to call the great mystery, the big guess, the divine, just because I really like thinking of this like sort of divine, godlike presence and just resorting to one word to hold it all. But I used a lot of different words throughout the book, and that blankness, that like infinite blankness, is the same thing to me as this divine kind of, it's not even a structure, it's just an experiment. And so when I sat in meditation and found this answer for what the mind is, it felt like one of the biggest aha moments I've ever uncovered, especially in the realm of meditating, because usually there's not much happening there. I'm letting my mind be blank. But on this particular day, this poem came, and it's called "The Mind is a Joke." The divine looks upon itself expressed in human shape. Its grand and chaotic creation, a reflection of the source from which it came. Muddled mystery, shining story of gnarling possibility. I take my body to the edge of the creek. If I am the experiment of the universe, seeing itself played out in form after form, what is my mind? A glitch? A puzzle? A mirror? The self shines back at its creator with rampant babble, with a lapping tongue and endless speech. I see it now as the water rushes into silence. The divine, when looking at its crooked work, must laugh. The mind is a joke for its maker.
Now, all right. Now, and then just to give some love back to lift up the infinite unrolling blankness. You use the word trickster in there too, and reflection. But then also to tie back into meditation, there's a line in this other poem, The Blankness, where you're laying all this on the line that could make us a little edgy. And then there's this refrain that you write into the poem that says, and then we keep breathing. But talk a little bit more about this sense of, well, I mean, there is that idea of the mind playing tricks on you. I'm seeing you outside walking as you're making all these reflections. And then maybe you're going inside and writing. I'm seeing you in the elements. I'm seeing you touching grass, as the kids say. Yeah. Because that's some other cliche that people say, what separates us from the animals? Well, we have this crazy brain that's driving us crazy all day and creating anxieties. Maybe we're contemplating ourselves. So laying all that on the line, was that on your mind?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the feeling of inviting in these questions that seem sort of unanswerable, and this feeling of kind of, I think, animal confusion when it comes to the tension that exists between the mind and the body, and all of these experiences and explorations that we have as human beings that, require us to make big choices and decisions and, move from one place to another or think about the future and try to imagine a new path forward. And we have access to what's happening in the whole world now. So we hold all of the grief of everything everywhere. And our minds are just sort of constantly playing tricks on us or, causing us to get in a tangle or maybe even stalling us out because we become so overwhelmed with that tension. And so I really wanted to invite this sense of like the trickster and humor into what it is to explore these things, because I do think without that, it's easy to get overwhelmed and lost in all of it. And even if you're like, oh, I just meditate all the time and I'm able to access this, infinite unrolling blankness and this great void that we exist in, what do you do with that back in the real world? And that's where I think kind of this humor or this, practice of looking closer at that tension and asking ourselves, like, how can we tend to that? And how can we, name what the mind is? And for me to name the mind as a joke was sort of like this experiment in suggesting that maybe it's just to be laughed at and it can be, something that isn't tangling us up so much, that just is sort of like, wow, I really made a mess out of that. And my mind did that for me. And that I can imagine this sort of like divine creator of it all just laughing about it and being like, look at that silly little thing I made. Isn't that funny? And there was some huge relief in me when I touched upon that. And I do think the book is kind of asking us, like, where do we find our relief? Because it's not just about being in some pristine, natural place that seems untouched by humans. And as someone who is in love with the planet and I consider myself, to be married to the earth, I have asked myself over and over again, well, what does that actually mean? Because as a human being, I am the earth and I am this place and I am of it. And so everything that we're doing and the entirety of the human story is also, on par and interconnected with all of that. And so there's got to be a way to feel a little bit more sort of part of the experiment as opposed to just being a witness or just being in awe of beauty is not just that. It's more than that. And I think this book asks a lot of questions about what that could be for everyone else.
Extrapolate some of the profundity around the title of the verse for now. There's a real suggestion of the ephemeral there, or maybe, or indeed that the verse could be different tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah. I like that the title has kind of two sides to it. It's like the verse for now, and maybe there'll be a different verse
for now.
Yeah, or the verse for now. And really it's this urgency of, we are under this sort of, doom of climate change. And what does that mean? Because something needs to change right now. And so this ephemeral nature and this nature of urgency, I think, are like side by side. And that's kind of another one of the tensions that I look at in the book is just, what does it feel like to know all of these things and to want to change things and feel that sense of urgency? And then to also understand that this will all be different tomorrow. And there are things that we probably will not be able to save. And there are things that will not, be bright and beautiful in the end, and things that are just brutal and very, quickly passing. And I think that we hold all of that. And what does it feel like to hold all of that? And how can we, and I think poems can do that. Poems can hold these giant macro feelings and concepts and put them right up against the like micro and the mundane of daily life and show you, oh, here it is again, an example of how we do this all day long, every day. The verse for now is a poem there's actually a poem in the book called The Verse for Now. And what it's talking about is basically that, like ephemeral, I could die tomorrow. And it isn't about me making this long lasting legacy as a writer or as a person even. It's really just for right right now? Like, who am I with right now? And I think about that in like a very personal way, but also like even just the sense of like your community and who you're connecting with locally and what you're doing in your own little world does have an effect. And that is really sometimes all you can do in the moment is that. And then there's, this play between the big action that needs to happen and then the like small present moment action.
Yes. I was just about to use that word, action. And I was going to go on a big tangent about this book, and especially its angle of meditation. And I was thinking about how, and to defend or agree whether or not this was particularly a collection where you were a little more, not entirely, but a little more cognizant of the audience that could be receiving it more so. Because, I mean, a poem can be for yourself, it can, or you really can be trying to reach someone, right? But in my weird way, and maybe you could respond to this, I'm thinking, well, Jacqueline's really trying to, she may or may not be laying out a blueprint of what we can do to save the world. However, the meditation angle of it is, you know, we can absorb the news, and it can be dry and terse and cryptic and scary and sometimes ill-informed, and we can get numb to it. But I think your poems here are almost, if not overtly, and perhaps encouraging us to get onto a different wavelength, specifically in the mind. Shift in perspective, and a shift in perspective could spur action. You're not saying, go out and do this now, but I don't know, kind of looking at the world a little differently, and then inspiration might come. Anyway, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I do think that is a piece of it, this idea of this perspective shift. And I think importantly, to sort of show my own progression as a writer of perspective shift. And part of that is, you know, continuing to ask the questions and not sort of pretending that I know everything or that I'm sure about any of this, and like kind of showing that more vulnerable, like lack of clarity, and maybe like all of these tools and things that I use to try to find the clarity and finding some answers, but then in the same note, having another poem that shows I don't know anything at all. And, right, you know, really owning what that looks like to be a person who feels extremely connected to the mystery and extremely in touch with all of these voices that the planet offers, and like this even cosmic lesson, but then at the same time recognizing that I'm a small little human animal and I don't actually know anything. And I think holding all of that and showing that as an example is sort of like, I really strive in all of my work to offer up these reminders, because I feel like humans, we're very forgetful, myself included. I turn to books all the time in order to like remember who am I? What can I do? What am I capable of? And when I see someone else reminding me of that, or when I read something else that sparks a certain inspiration, that can be a catalyst for me to remember and to re-engage or to fill my own cup up and keep going. So there's definitely that aspect. But I think, unlike my other books, I do think in this particular book, I let myself lean a lot further into like the hopelessness of things and not just the hope. And so kind of trying to showcase how those things exist side by side and how we can like accept that and still, you know, be in love with being alive, and also acknowledge at the same time all of the parts of it that are really difficult and that we don't know how to change.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm in a poetic mood this month, but maybe hopelessness and hope are a Mobius strip, and hopelessness feeds you into hope, hopefully. No pun intended, actually. So, but yeah, you've used the word lessons, and this book has got me thinking also about how there is a humbleness in, frankly, inevitably needing to relearn lessons. Maybe things we did absorb that nature reminds us of.
Oh yeah,
because it is
yeah.
it's like a different classroom out there, you know?
Yeah, and I really pride myself in being like a lifelong student, and I think that that's very zen and very, you can really come back to that again and again in the world of meditation because you lose sight maybe of your practice and then you come back to it and it changes as you grow. But also just this sense of I clearly feel very it's obvious through all of my work and who I am as a person that I'm in love with being alive. And then at the same time, I am also someone who grieves very deeply and feels, all the pain that exists in that love. And I think trying to make a book that felt like it was open more to like this darkness and my last book of poems, Help in the Dark Season, was very much like a progression of coming out of like recognizing all of my own childhood trauma into all of these like tools and transformative experiences that did allow me to open up to love. Mm-hmm. And then by the time I got around years and years later to making this book, I feel like I was asking a different question about love. Like I was letting myself reopen to it. And even in the prologue to the verse for now, I'm talk about how in these months and months and months of meditation, I just was, the hermit and I was tucked away in the forest. And then one day I received this message that was basically like, hey, you're actually a human being. And in this lifetime, you are meant to love another human being and to be in partnership. It's very important. And I was like, what? Yeah. I thought I had like already worked past that craving and I had written all these poems about it and I had moved through this huge transformation of feeling this desire to have partnership. And then I heard this, so clearly and I could not deny it. And then very shortly after that, the whole story of my life started to transform because I had to reopen this question of what it looks like to love another human, what it looks like to learn the lessons of relationship, and equally, and maybe even more importantly, what does it look like to do that in a time where we are experiencing so much collapse? How do you love and open yourself to love in this time where really there is this urgency? And that has been a big part of what the book kind of has unfurled for me. And I mean, I think that a lot of that it's shown in the book. And then there's also this whole piece of homecoming that's connected to that. And I do think that that's like a very new piece of my writing experience that this collection explores.
Would you perhaps be up to reading another poem, or did you perhaps intend to read another poem for us on this podcast? And may it or may not be New Moon?
Oh yeah,
because everything you were kind of talking about was leading into the energies that I feel in that poem. There is grief, there's also celebration, there's also reawakening, there's nurturing. And there's this word at the end that I really like that I want to unpack. But yeah, could you read New Moon?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay,
I'll
great.
Pull it up. I feel like there's so many different things to talk about in the book that sometimes I get so I'm this is just a book that kind of has asked me to explore so many different pieces of myself. Yeah. And I like that you picked this one though. Oh, yeah. New Moon. Leather jacket and snakeskin boots, an outfit for a grocery store run. I blast country music and drive like a careful maniac. I come home and put my body on the wet green ground. I notice the ticks before they bite. I fill the bathtub with pink roses. I liberate the puny fruit trees from their cages and haul loads of manure to fertilize them. I position a hose for each tree to get a good long drink. A hummingbird hovers over the shimmering stream. I dance and sing while I whack and pull and dig. I evoke the bodily strength of my dead best friend. I sing the songs he loved most. When the giant cypress branch crashes down and blocks the driveway, I heave the logs into a pile, arms bare, smelling of sweat. The new moon says, keep up the work of discernment and release.
This is one of my favorite poems I've read in years. And like roller coaster isn't the right word, right? But we do go through it all. And it's very musical in its meter, I think. But beautiful, a lot of energy there, and the hose is out there, you're nurturing everything, but you're really going through something. But gosh, that really sticks with me. Discernment, release. Can you just talk about discernment, release? That also feels really powerful in this book.
Yeah. It's like this process of carefully. I mean, when I think of the word discernment, I think of carefully kind of looking between the spaces and things and reading between the lines and seeing everything that's there and taking such care to like witness and dig in, and maybe even like making a choice and a decision within that. And then to have follow it with the word release is sort of just like, yeah. And then there's a lot of that you then let go. So you choose what to hold on to, you choose what to release. Yeah. And I remember all of this poem came in the height of the pandemic and really like having this sense of myself and all that I was holding and carrying, and then thinking about that in the larger sense, which is always in my mind, my job as a poet is to kind of see what's happening inside myself and then expand the lens a little bit and feel what's happening for everyone. And I felt at that moment that I was working so hard to discern between what I needed to carry with me all the time, which is a lot of grief, and recognizing like what pieces of that I could let go and what pieces of that were sort of, I could put down for later. Even to release something doesn't mean it never comes back. It might just be you release it for now and then later you look at it again. And I think that I do a lot of work with that in the book. And even, back to the poem that you were talking about earlier, the lift up the infinite unrolling blankness. I think there is a piece of that, which is like, this idea of, these questions that we ask ourselves, like how much can we hold and how much work can we even do? And I'm always really interested in kind of reconnecting with what am I capable of? I'm part of this huge, grand, massive experiment, and so much moves through me as a person and as a poet. So much moves through me constantly. And the book there's a lot of poems that sort of decipher like, what can I actually translate? What am I actually capable of offering, and why do I want to, and do I need to? And maybe there are just some things that I can let just be. I love talking about poetry in this sense where, poems are always passing through me constantly all day long. And there are only certain moments where I have enough energy or wherewithal or time to like let the muse land and come out through me. And when I was younger, I felt way more like responsibility around that. Like, oh, I gotta get it all down. Like this is such an honor to be this person who gets to do this. And now I'm much more like, well, maybe just this poem is meant to just pass through my body and that is all. Mm-hmm. And I can just love that and let that be and then release it and keep going. So
yes. Or maybe, I don't know. Or maybe residues of it or seeds of it will stick around and you can just use that stuff for later, maybe. Mm-hmm. So this book, very much about nature, coming up on Earth Day, which is a Tuesday, I think.
April 22nd.
April 22nd. And so there's going to be an event, I believe it's at 27th Letter Press.
Yes.
Can you tell us just how you're feeling about it and just the event in general and the launch?
Yeah, that's the release date of the book, and it's at 27th Letter. It'll be at 7 p.m. and I'm sure there'll be lots of treats and many sweet faces. And I can't wait to read the poems to folks. Honestly, reading the poems from the actual book for the first time is one of the greatest joys of my life. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I kind of can't believe that it gets to happen on Earth Day, mostly just because as I've gotten older, like anniversaries and certain days like that have begun to hold a lot more weight for me. And I like there being a time and space where we all acknowledge, like even National Poetry Month, I'm always like, oh, it's so wonderful to, without limitation, just be able to talk about poetry all month long. And I do that all the time anyway, but then there's some like sense of shared permission or something in these dates. So even just saying like, this is Earth Day and I'm about to read you all of these poems about my love for this planet, that feels very timely and right. So I'm excited to celebrate with everyone.
And it's such a cool, unique space. And now that we're on the other side of daylight savings time, it's going to be hopefully a nice orange sunset glow kind of just coming in. A lot of natural light spills in there. You know, in the beginning of this interview, I was like, I had two disparate things on my mind. And one of them was Ethan Hawke. I'm now finally going to bring back the other one that was just cooking in my brain. I was hearing folks on NPR talk today about art, that any piece of art or culture that kind of gave them a bit of a revelatory moment. And one of the hosts brought up the poems of Mary Oliver and Wild Geese. And this host was saying self-consciously that he's very aware that Mary Oliver's poetry has been sort of co-opted into sort of the stitched upon pillows, live, laugh, love, overly quoted, possibly cheesy poetry. But I was like, but then that host and me are like, you know what though? These poems still make us feel something, and that matters. So I wanted to tee that up to you, especially because not only are you a poet, but you are also an educator. You do the workshops. You are someone who wants to inspire poetry. And here we are. It's Poetry Month, Jacqueline.
Yeah.
Thoughts on poetry?
Gosh. Listen, Mary Oliver did something that I think has always felt very important to me. And what she did was she made her experience of the mystery accessible for others. And everyone is constantly trying to connect with that. And she found the language to invite people in, and people who have absolutely no sense of, I love poetry, I'm a poetry reader, can resonate with Mary. And I'm like, I mean, I have Mary's name tattooed in a little heart on my arm that I got the day she died, because I think she did something so profoundly magical. And it is true that she has sort of been co-opted into the realm of, cheesy kind of, maybe just like more mainstream language. And I'm like, great. I don't know. I don't think she would have anything to say about that, except for to say, as long as people are exactly how you put it, feeling what she was offering, that's amazing. And I think she probably thinks it's funny that it's,
oh, sure.
I think she's probably laughing in her little perfect nature realm somewhere where her spirit exists. I think she's just probably real tickled by it all. But I also feel that, her poems almost in a very simplistic daily kind of way solve these huge problems. They answer these huge, massive questions, but in like a grounded, regular life kind of way. Like you can access the nature that she is talking about by just literally stepping out your front door, even if you live in an urban setting. She doesn't make the natural world this other, even though it is honestly like her church. She does call it sacred, but she doesn't other it to the extent where like the regular everyday person can't enter that space. Sure. So I think that is just, I would say that that's the highest compliment I've ever received, is to say that any of my work reminds folks of Mary's work, because I think that there is this connection between like what all of the big feelings that she kind of works with. Like she really touches on grief. She really touches on praise. She touches on beauty, but she touches on brutality. She doesn't leave things out. And I really have always appreciated that about her.
And like you, her poems can be inspirational. But, and also like Mary, what you also do, but like maybe what any poet does is it feels like an invitation to me. If the reader is reading a poem, they are perhaps very often intuiting that this writer of this poem has arrived at or nearly arrived at an albeit complex form of wisdom. They have discovered something, and the poem is sort of an invitation to come along with me and look at this complex, weird wisdom I found. What do you think about this? What do you think about this?
Yeah, well, I like that conversational tone you're adding to it, because it should be like that.
Yes.
That I think, like, when a poem really strikes people, and this is not to take away from like the esoteric, strange realm of poetry that exists, because I love all of that also. But that doesn't make me love Mary less, you know? Like, she's doing something else. She's going beyond. She's reaching towards everyone, and I think that before I even really knew her work, at a very young age, when I was in writing school, I decided that I wanted to reach as many people as I could. I wanted to reach everyone. I wasn't trying to write poetry only for my peers or only for this academic realm that I was in. I actually was like, nope, I'm not interested in that. And then as I moved through my life, I realized what I was interested in was being in service and, you know, uncovering wisdom, taking the time to do that, but then without the ego attached, you know, offering that up as to say, you know, I'm just another human being, and I just took the time and developed the craft in which to share this through. And I feel like all of her work is all about that. Like, she's like, I took the time with my little notebook to go out a day after day after day to uncover these things, but not just for me, you know, for everyone. And that's always been my inspiration as well.
The verse for now, coming out on Earth Day on the also fittingly titled Flower Press, which is great.
Yes.
And I'm going to call it the party. The launch party is at 27th Press. There'll be more info in the show notes. Jacqueline, where can people connect with you? I think you're on Instagram, right? Where can
Instagram. Yep, at J Suskin. That's my last name. And I have a Substack also I put out every month, which is also under my name. And I have a Substack that kind of gives my monthly newsletter. And then I have a private Substack. I've been writing all these personal essays, which that's been really a special, different experience as a poet. I've been really enjoying that.
Amazing. And JacquelineSuskin.com. We'll link to all of that, including the Substack, in the show notes. Jacqueline, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Again, I appreciate it.
Come back every April, basically.
I won't stop writing books, that's for sure.
Folks at home, thanks for listening to this podcast. I just want you to, and Jacqueline wants you to, just go write a poem, literally today. And also mark your calendars for Earth Day. That's easy to remember. It's April 22nd. Oh, wow. The 55th Earth Day. That feels, I like 5 and 10 anniversaries. That's great. All right. Well, you've listened to another episode of A Little Too Quiet. It is the Ferndale Library Podcast. It's brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. Go to ferndalefriends.org for more information about those fine folks and how to support this podcast. Or you can just rate, review, and subscribe. We'll be back next week with more. Thanks for listening.